Let's queer up LGBTQ plus civil rights. Pete Buttigieg issues warning about LGBTQ plus rights, saying, "I don't think anything is safe."
Situation of a upper middle class married white gay dude is not the same as a trans kid in Texas or any number of LGBTQ people of color trying to survive right now. But I think we're actually in an exceptionally early moment in terms of some figures deciding that there's utility, political utility, in targeting trans people and LGBTQ people more generally. I mean, look how many people voted against marriage equality, which should have been an easy one, as recently as a few months ago. And so I think it's a reminder that none of what's been gained is really locked in. I don't think anything is safe. I mean, Roe just fell, and that was the law of the land for longer than I've been alive. Nothing is safe, especially right now when you have one side that has a maximalist commitment to tearing down every norm and law they don't like. So where does that put us? And by the way, why does it happen? I think it's happening because there are some people who find it easier to pick on really vulnerable young people than to explain why they voted no on money for roads and bridges or stood in the way of $35 insulin.
Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg knows everything when it comes to airline mergers, electric vehicle chargers, or the massive infrastructure law that may become President Joe Biden's legacy. But ask him about the ongoing attack on LGBTQ plus rights in this country, and the most senior ever gay official in the U.S. government grows more intense. In a recent interview with Time, he said hate-mongering is not fading, but getting worse. His statement holds more gravity after 36 Republican senators and 169 members of the GOP House caucus voted against last year's Respect for Marriage Act. He also mentioned, quote, "There's utility, political utility, in targeting trans people and LGBTQ people more generally," end quote. This is the frightening reality of LGBTQ plus rights in this country. After securing a victory on abortion, the culture warriors have turned to identity politics as an animating force. Pointing at the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which of course had been the law of the land longer than he had been alive, Secretary Buttigieg says, quote, "I don't think anything is safe," end quote. And a couple of different emotions come over me. Every time I hear him speak, I still get overwhelmed that we've got an advocate this high up in our government. And he talks about the issues so well. And he talks about his jobs issues. He talks about his family issues. And I remember the Republicans, was it last year or the year prior, just attacked him for taking paternity leave to be with his child, he and Chasen's new child.
Homophobic.
Homophobic.
That's a homophobic attack.
Yeah, or anti-gay. Certainly, I don't like the word homophobic because they are not afraid of us. They're not afraid of us. They are just coming straight for us. But to see him like this, it makes me feel good. Everything he says is absolutely on point. And I don't think there's another word left to say. Although hopefully for the purposes of the show, people will find other words to say.
I think it's stunning to hear him say that Roe was the law of the land longer than he's been alive. It's just stunning to think how far he's come in such a short period of time. He was a mayor, unknown 5 years ago or so. And, now he's probably lined up pretty nicely when Joe Biden leaves the presidency in, what'll that be, 2028, to make a run at.
Scott, I'm curious how some of his words in front of Time wash over you. You're the executive director at Safe Schools. He talks about bullies, and what bullies do is they don't pick on somebody that's a real fight. They pick on those that are weaker and less than them, and he references students. That must just absolutely be center lane for you.
Yeah, because that's what we're trying to teach kids to do, to stand up for themselves, to be leaders, to be advocates, not people who sit around with their fingers crossed, hoping and praying that somebody else makes a decision in their favor. We want the kids to be leaders. We want the kids to be the elected officials. We want kids to be sitting at those business corporate tables and making the decisions for themselves, for their communities. And
CJ, I turn to you. Same related question. He's talking about the bullies of attacking the weakest individuals that you can attack. There's certainly, in terms of community, of the ease to do it for the bully, there's no better target for trans and non-binary young people.
Youth, especially trans and non-binary youth, are not weak. We are going to fight, like you said, Scott. We are going to stand up for ourselves, and we already have been. These past 2 years, we've been put to this test by Governor Ron DeSantis here in Florida, and we aren't going to back down. Fight for our rights.
You know, just one last thought. One of the things that I really like about what Buttigieg says is he's blowing a dog whistle, I think, first and foremost for us. I think he is even queer coding his answer there, because what he is saying is nothing is safe. And who is he telling that to? Well, he's telling that to LGBT people, and he seamlessly threads the needle of going, do we like bullies? No, of course we don't. Do we hate bullies? Yes, of course we do. He describes what bullies do. Bullies are so hated because when they're bigger and stronger, they should be the ones that protect those that are weaker and more vulnerable. But bullies are bullies by their very nature because they exert their brute force because they can. And therefore, I think Buttigieg is blowing a dog whistle to say to us, look, you are all weaker than the bully that is attacking us. And if you take anything for granted, you're making a mistake. I think it's a dog whistle, honestly. And it's not only a dog whistle on Buttigieg telling us you can't take anything for granted. He's also talking about those that would be oppressed by the bully beyond LGBT. He's talking about Black people. He's talking about Latinos. He's talking about faith diversity of those that are anti-Semitic. He's talking about, frankly, librarians in libraries that have no ability to stand up against a fascist mentality in Tallahassee or other state capitals that say, we get what we want, and if you don't give us your lunch money, we're going to beat the crap out of you. And that's what I hear Pete Buttigieg say. It's a great dog whistle. Pete, thank you very much. I echo what John says. I get emotional over it because I'm really glad that we have somebody of your talent to be able to sit there in front of the Time magazine editorial board and say, y'all, we got a big bully that we better stand up to, or we have really serious problems. We are Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only live daily LGBTQ+ evening news show from Happening Out Television Network. In the model of PBS and NPR, we educate, inform, and entertain by supporting the 10 pillars of the LGBTQ+ community, with more than 100,000 a week watching on Roku, Apple Television, and other channels. To keep the stories going, we accept donations with 100% transparency. Stay updated and live authentically with Queer News Tonight.